Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, we are jumping back into our series on sefer Sichos Haran, and it's so wonderful to see everybody here. I hope everybody's doing well. Be'ezras Hashem, I will share my screen so we can see the sources inside. And of course, it goes without saying, but of course we're going to say it as well, that the shiur today should be as a chus for all of our beloved soldiers who are protecting our brethren, our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, as well as for all of Yoshvei B'nai Eretz Yisrael. hakodesh Baruch Hu should continue to protect, and we should see and continue to see nisim and aflois, unbelievable wonders and miraculous salvation for all of Am Yisrael all over the world. We should come closer and closer to Mashiach as we approach the Chag HaGeula. B'Nisan Higalu, the Gemara says, Am Yisrael were redeemed in Nisan, and B'Nisan Asidin Li Gael. So we're getting very, very close, B'Ezras Hashem. We should only hear good news. So we continue with Sichos Haran. I'm just going to actually make a bracha, which I did not do prior. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarai. Okay, we continue with Sichos Haran Kuf Tzadi Vav. And Rav Nosson writes like this: Sichos hakodesh shel Rabbeinu Zal Arli Yom Sheni Parshas Noach Taf Kuf Aleph. The following is Rabbi Nachman's expression of what he said on Sunday evening, Arli Yom Sheni, Sunday afternoon, Parshas Noach Taf Kuf Ayin, which was the year before Rabbi Nachman left the world, the year 1809, Parshas Noach, about a year before the Rebbe was nifter. And he writes like this: Rabbi Nachman said, HaTorah sheli gedola ma'od. The Torah that I'm revealing is gedola ma'od. It's extremely great. It's extremely big. Gedola. V'hi kula ruach hakodesh. The whole entire Torah that I'm revealing is ruach hakodesh. V'yachayden leida mimena asidos. So much so that just like a person who has ruach hakodesh means that they're able to tell the future, they can see. It's like an aspect of clairvoyance. The Rebbe said, from my Torah, you can see the future. Shemi sheyate atzmai, a person who turns himself. Very important lashon. Sheyate atzmo. You need to sort of get your own self out of the way, but to lean over. V'yazin v'yakshiv ha'Torah sheli, and to really listen, not just to learn, but to be makshiv, to listen deeply to the tone and the tenor of the Torah that Rabbi Nachman is revealing. Yachaleda asida sheyeh. He can be able to perceive and foretell what has yet to unfold in the world. And it goes without saying that after the things unfold, after these things actually happen in the world, of course, a person looking retrospectively can find hints to all of that which unfolded in the world, already rooted in the Rebbe's Torah after it happens. Of course, that's a much easier trick, right, than being able to identify what will yet unfold. But once things have already happened, you can look back and easily find how Rabbi Nachman's Torah was already hinting to all of the things that would yet happen in the world. Everything was already hinted to and encoded in and reflected in the teaching that Rabbi Nachman already taught. Says Rav Nosson, all of this I heard after Shabbos Parshas Bereshis, again, at a year before Rabbi Nachman was nistalek from the world. In the year 1809, Rabbi Nachman was nifter in the year 1810. At the time that I demonstrated to him and I showed him the lesson, Rabbi Nosson says that I transcribed, which was the Torah printed in Likutei Moharan Tinyana in the 67th entry, which is called Bereshis La'ein Kol Yisrael B'Ksav Etpesas B'Likutei Tinyana Siman Samach Hazayin. Rabbi Nosson heard the Rebbe teach the Torah. He went and recorded it, and he brought it in front of Rabbi Nachman. And that very week, says Rabbi Nosson, we saw this with our own eyes. How in that teaching, the teaching that was revealed right around the time that Rabbi Nachman said, you can tell the future from my teachings, itself was reflecting what was going to happen. How so? Says Rav Nosson, Ki Maisa Shaya Kachaya. This is the story. This is what took place. They couldn't believe it. Ki b'shva koidem, because the week earlier, b'yom chamishi, shu chaf hei tishrei, on the day, chaf hei tishrei, on the 25th day of the month of Tishrei, a week prior, Shana Hanal, that year, Tavkuf Ayin, 1809, nistalek kvoid harav agoin butzina kadisha chasan mufursam, Mareina Rav Levi Yitzchak Zeichat Tzadik Levracha. Rav Levi Yitzchak Berditchover had passed away the week before Rabbi Nachman taught the Torah of Bereshis Le'enikal Yisrael, which is Likutei Moharan Torah Samach Zayin. Av based in the Kilas Kodesh Berditchov, the Av based in the Rosh Hashiva, the Rebbe, the extraordinary defender and advocate of the Jewish nation from the city of Berditchov, had left the world. Now, Ubeshabbos Sha'achar Yom HaChamishi Anal Shu Shabbos Bereshis, it was a few days later, because that was on a Thursday, 2 days later, that Shabbos, Rabbi Nachman taught the teaching of Likutei Moharan Samach Zayin. Az Nemra HaTorah Hanal Mipir Rabbeinu Zal. Rabbi Nachman said this teaching, Hamaschelas Bereshis Le'enei Kol Yisrael, that begins with the heading Bereshis, obviously the first pasuk in the Torah, and its connection with the last teaching in the Torah, which is, of course, that time of year, right? The time of Simchas Torah, when we finish the Torah and we start it again. So demonstrating the connection between the end of the Torah, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, and the beginning of the Torah, Bereshis, Bara Elokim. What does that Torah speak about? Hamadaberes me'alamas ha'pe'er shel Yisrael. That whole teaching speaks about how the pe'er, the glory of the Jewish nation, the tefillin of Klal Yisrael, is nitalek, is hidden. That Torah explicitly speaks about the departure of the tzaddik, the passing away of the tzaddik, Shehu Pe'er Shel Yisrael, who is called Pe'er, who is called the glory of Klal Yisrael. When, says Rav Nosson, when we were hearing Rabbi Nachman speak about this topic, we couldn't really understand certainly the extent of what his intention was, but why is he speaking about this now? What happened over there? Why all of a sudden, this particular Shabbos, the Rebbe is speaking about a tzaddik being nifter, the pe'er, the glory of Klal Yisrael? Because it was only 2 days after the Berditchover had been nifter, and of course back then, communication was a lot slower. So says Rav Nosson, Ki az ba'isa Shabbos, on that Shabbos, adayin lo yinoda klal miptiras at tzaddik hanal. Nobody knew that the Berditchover had left the world. Ad Yom Sheni Achar Shabbos. It took until the following Monday for the news to reach the city where Rabbi Nachman in Uman, where Rabbi Nachman was teaching this Torah. It took until Monday for the news of the Berditchover's passing to reach. Nobody knew. They couldn't have known. Then after Shabbos had passed, after Sunday had passed, when it arrived, Monday, then we knew about the great anguish of Klal Yisrael, that the great Berditchover Rav, Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchov, who was of course Rav Nosson's Rebbe as well, because Rav Nosson spent time by the Berditchover before he arrived at Rabbi Nachman's court, and so much so that there are those who even say that Rav Nosson actually wrote some of sefer Kedushas Levi. Kedushas Levi is one of the early Hasidic Svarim, which was written by the Berditchover himself, but there are some who say that there are some passages that were written by Rav Nosson, and I was able to identify one passage in Kedushas Levi. I believe it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Parshas Va'era, which is extremely similar in its formulation to Likutei Moharan, Torah Samach Gimel. Fascinating. So perhaps it's possible to suggest that you can see an overlap in its formulation. The wording is almost explicitly the same. Perhaps that's an indicator that that section was written by Rav Nosson, but of course Rav Nosson had a deep, deep, deep connection to the Berditchover. They had an incredibly close relationship. They respected each other, not just Rav Nosson to Rav Levi Yitzchak. Rav Levi Yitzchak respected Rav Nosson in turn. They had a very, very close and adoring relationship. There's a famous story where Rav Nosson, after he came close to Rabbi Nachman, was already influenced by Rabbi Nachman's way, and of course the Breslovers would daven very loudly, and there was a lot of clapping. It was a very noisy affair when Breslover Hasidim daven, certainly Rav Nosson. And one time Rav Nosson was traveling, and he came to the Beis Medrash of Rav Levi Yitzchak in Berditchov, and came time to daven. Rav Nosson was davening with koilos ubrakim, with thunder and lightning, super loudly, and with clapping, and with tremendous passion. And so one of the Hasidim of the Berditchover came over to Rav Nosson, and told him, maybe you're disturbing Rebbe Levi Yitzchak's davening. You're davening so loud, it's possible that you're disturbing the davening of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. And I guess they had seated Reb Nosson close to the front because Rebbe Levi Yitzchak overheard this. And Rebbe Levi Yitzchak said to the chassid, he said, how do you know if he's disturbing me? Maybe in some way I'm disturbing him. Meaning, how do you know? Meaning, because to that chassid it was a given. Like, Reb Nosson, you're on this level, and the Berditchover is on that level, and you need to quiet down so that you don't disturb the davening of the great tzaddik. And Rebbe Levi Yitzchak said, how do you know whose tefillah is stronger? Maybe I'm disturbing him. So Rebbe Levi Yitzchak admired Reb Nosson in turn, and they had this close relationship. So he speaks over here about the Monday, which followed the Shabbos when Rabbi Nachman taught Likutei Moharan, which was all about the tzaddik leaving the world, the pe'er, the glory, the splendor of Klal Yisrael leaving the world, when they then found out what the Rebbe had been referring to. What the Rebbe knew in a way that you couldn't know, because nobody knew, but the Rebbe knew. And that's what he's teaching over here. His Torah, it has encoded within it, it's all ruach hakodesh. All ruach hakodesh. And a person who then is able to wait until events unfold, you then look back, you say, oh, of course, this is what the tzaddik was referring to. So then on that Monday, Noid Alanu, he continues, Mitzarasan Shal Yisrael, we were able to find out, it became known to us, the great tsar, the great anguish of Klal Yisrael, nistalek tzaddik hagadol hanizkel el, that great tzaddik had left the world, and then az hayinu mevinim lemafreya, then we were able to understand retroactively, Rabbeinu zal gila ba'atara hanal, that is what Rabbi Nachman was speaking about, was hinting to, was implying, when he revealed that Torah, that fateful Shabbos, because that Torah speaks about how the pe'er, the splendor of Klal Yisrael, is lost, and it's known, says Rav Nosson, that the tzaddik hanal, that particular tzaddik, the Berditchover Rav, hayanikra b'pi Rabbeinu zal pe'er shal Yisrael. Rabbi Nachman constantly made reference to that tzaddik as the pe'er of Klal Yisrael, the splendor of Klal Yisrael. That was his code word for the Berditchover. So again, they couldn't make that connection because maybe they had no idea that the Berditchover was even close to leaving the world. It didn't occur to them. But here Rabbi Nachman teaches a whole Torah where the whole topic is that there's a tzaddik who's the pe'er of Klal Yisrael, and Rabbi Nachman had always made reference to the Berditchover as the pe'er, the splendor, the tefillin, which I'll speak about in a minute, the tefillin of Klal Yisrael. And they had no idea how to connect the two things. And then it comes Monday and they find out that the Thursday prior, the Berditchover had left the world. Now, Rabbi Nachman had no human way of knowing this. It wasn't possible. No news had reached Uman until the following Monday. But the Rebbe knew, ruach hakodesh. But Rabbi Nachman referred to the Berditchover as the pe'er shel Yisrael, the splendor of Klal Yisrael, b'chinas tefillin, the aspect of tefillin. And he writes, Kimavur b'makam acher, as is recorded elsewhere, and he's referring to a piece in Likutei Moharan where Rabbi Nachman once sent his tefillin to be checked by the sefer. And the sefer asked Rabbi Nachman, why all of a sudden, just at a random time, you're coming to check your tefillin? So Rabbi Nachman said, because the Berditchover Rav is traveling around. He's taking an asiyah. For whatever reason, he was out of his place, and on the road, he was traveling to nearby cities and villages. And Rabbi Nachman said that tzaddik is the tefillin of Klal Yisrael, is the pe'er of Klal Yisrael. And invariably, when a tzaddik leaves and he's not surrounded by his entourage, he's not surrounded by his support system, his gabbayim, his chassidim, naturally there's going to be indignities along the way. And that is going to cause a blemish in the pe'er, which is the tefillin of Klal Yisrael, that's called pe'er, right? Pe'eri aloi, pe'eroi aloi, pe'eri alav, right? So tefillin are called a pe'er. Oiter Yisrael b'sifara, right? We say when we make the bracha in the morning, Birchas HaShachar, we kiss our tefillin. Tefillin is the pe'er, is the splendor, is the crown. So when the Berditchover travels and people treat him with less than the respect he deserves, so that can cause a pegam in our tefillin. So Rabbi Nachman went to check his tefillin. You see that the Rebbe referred to the Berditchover Rav as the pe'er of Klal Yisrael. Fascinatingly enough, one of the most crucial core teachings, one of the most well-known teachings in the sefer Kedushas Levi, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, or Berditchov sefer of his Torah thoughts on the weekly parsha, is a teaching, I'm sure we've learned it together in some capacity in the past, where Rebbe Levi Yitzchak speaks about, it's perfect coming up to Pesach now, why it is that we, Klal Yisrael, refer to Pesach as Pesach, right? We refer to it, that's the name of the Chag, that's how we refer to it. It's the Chag, the Yontiv of Pesach. But in the Torah, you do not find that Pesach is called Pesach. Instead, it is called Chag HaMatzos. Nowhere in the Torah is Pesach called Pesach. That's just what we call it. In the Torah, it's called Chag HaMatzos. Says the Berditchover, why is it? Why do we call it two different things? Hashem calls it one thing, we call it another thing. Says Rav Levi Yitzchak, because when we call it Pesach, we are praising hakodesh Baruch Hu. We're saying, hakodesh Baruch Hu, you demonstrated such love for us. You came down into Mitzrayim. We were all completely enmeshed within that society, and you were pasach ala batim, and you jumped over our homes. You skipped us. You singled us out. You separated us. And we're praising Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. We call it Pesach because we want to praise Hashem. We're so proud. We're so adoring. We can't believe the privilege that we have to have this relationship with the Infinite One. Hashem, says the Berditchover, is busy praising Klal Yisrael. So he calls it Chag HaMatzos, which makes reference to our great faith. Zacharti l'chesed urayich avas klulasayich leichtech acher b'midbar be'eretz lo zerua. When we demonstrated such faith, we came into the desert without any provisions, just with a dough that was baking on our backs. Hashem wants to praise us. He calls it Chag HaMatzos. We want to praise Hashem. We call it Pesach. This is the love that's taking place, where as Hashem he'emarta hayoim, like he says over there, we affirm, it's a pasuk in Devar, we affirm our connection to Hashem, v'Hashem he'emircha, and Hashem responds in kind. Ani l'doidi v'doidi li. We praise Hashem, Hashem praises us. Says the Berditchover, he says this is the aspect of tefillin. Our tefillin contains the praise of Hashem, because it speaks about Shema, Vayekeviacha, right? It speaks about how Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, the bechin of singling us out and carrying us along, and we have such thanks and gratitude, and we're praising Hashem. And of course, the Gemara in Bracha says, what does it say in Hashem's tefillin? Hashem also wears tefillin. Tefillin demara alma maksiv behu. What does it say in Hashem's tefillin? Mika amchi Yisrael. Hashem's praising us. He calls it Chag HaMatzos, we call it Pesach. Our tefillin praise Hashem, his tefillin praise us. Says Rabbi Yitzchak over there, he says that's the deeper meaning of Chazal when they teach us that a person should not be mesiach das from tefillin. Shouldn't distract themselves, shouldn't think about something else on a simple level while they're wearing tefillin. You have to be thinking about your tefillin. To recognize you're wearing tefillin, a person has to keep a clean body. That's why a person should constantly touch the tefillin shel yad, tefillin shel reish, to remind themselves, Gewalt, I'm wearing tefillin. Very important not to be mesiach das. Now that's what it means on a simple level. Says the Berditchover Rav, it's much deeper. Now that we've said that tefillin hints to this mutual praise, like two lovers who just can't talk about anything else but each other, that's the concept of ani l'doidi v'doidi li, and that's wrapped up into the idea of tefillin. Says the Berditchover, that's what it means. Don't be mesiach das from tefillin. Doesn't only mean when you're wearing tefillin, don't be distracted. It means spend your whole life being busy, says Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, with one of these two praises. Either be busy praising Hashem, constantly walking around and wanting to tell everybody, look how beautiful and how glorious and how wondrous Hashem is, that Hashem is taking such good care of us. Speak about the nisim and the flies. We're experiencing awesome miracles. There are missiles the size of school buses that are hurtling down into our Tzenu HaKadosh, and B'chazi Hashem, it should continue. Hashem is protecting in remarkable ways. Either be busy praising Hashem, or be busy, and of course that's what the Berditchover was known for, be busy praising Klal Yisrael. He was known as the Sani Goyren Shal Yisrael. He was the defense attorney for Klal Yisrael. He was always Malamed Sichos. It says in Parshas Bay, it says at the end of Parshas Bay, that the mouth was only created in Kedushas Levi. He says the only reason we have a mouth is to be Malamed Sichos on Klal Yisrael. That was the Berditchover's whole thing. So how beautiful that Rabbi Nachman referred to this tzaddik who has such a famous and emblematic teaching about tefillin. He would refer to him as the tefillin of Klal Yisrael. So you see, coming back to Breslov, coming back to Rabbi Nachman, you see that Rabbi Nachman's Torah contained ruach hakodesh. You were able to know the future from Rabbi Nachman's Torah. V'chein, Rabbi Nachman continues, V'ayisa Shana, that year, lo yahaya esrogim mitzuyim. There were no esrogim. Take it as a given today, after Yom Kippur you go and buy an esrog. Back there, for whatever reason, the supply chain was broken, the crop wasn't good, there was no esrogim. Imagine that, coming to Sukkot, they were not able to buy esrogim. On Pines, and then there was some kind of wild miracle, and all of a sudden esrogim came to town. The Amr Rabbeinu Zal, Rabbi Nachman said, Shahaya betuach al tzaddiki adar, he was relying on the merit of the tzaddikim of that generation, ubefrat al tzaddik hanal, and particularly on the great tzaddik of Levi Yitzchak, with whom Rabbi Nachman also had a very, very deep bond, tremendous love that they had for one another. Shu pe'er hakila shalanu, again, he referred to him as the pe'er, the glory of our region, sheyeh esrogim, and he was relying on this, that there would be esrogim, the pre-eitz hadar, again, an aspect of splendor, an aspect of beauty, the aspect of wanting to look so carefully to make sure you don't find one speck, which was Rebbe Yitzchak's whole thing. He looked at Yid and he didn't see any ra. All he saw was how shining we are. All he saw, because the esrog is connected to Lev, he saw our Lev Tov. He saw every Yid is mamish has a pure, pure heart. Umum ein bach kulach yafer rayasi, like the pasuk says in Shir Ashir. So coming back to this story, Al Kain says, Reb Nosson, Ra'inu beberer, we saw super clearly and obviously, Sharabeinu Gila Barach Kod Shabbat Torah Hanal, Estalkus Atzadik Hanal, that Rabbi Nachman was revealing in his great ruach hakodesh what would occur, or what had happened that he knew, but nobody else had found out yet. He knew it, ruach hakodesh, Kamavur Ata Lama'ayan, like the person who studies that Torah can see Shemamish Kol Torah Hanal, Medaberes Me'inin Zed, Doik V'Tishkach, go and read it. And now you're even though now we know what was going to be revealed to them only a few days later, but if you realize, well, this Torah was said before anyone knew, it's a pella. You look back at that teaching, all you see is ruach hakodesh. This is another comment that Rabbi Nachman made when he saw that Torah Samach Zayin, which was called Kuli Ruach HaKodesh, when he saw it written down, because Rabbi Nosson would hear the teachings and then he would transcribe them. He said like this. He said, HaMusar shal HaTorah shali nifla va'atzum ma'oid. The Musar, the ethical guidance in my Torah is nifla va'atzum ma'oid, is extremely awesome and wondrous. Had I taught the Torah a little bit more direct, speaking in a way of musar, speaking more explicitly, it would really awaken and inspire and break the heart very much. But the Rebbe's way was to teach words of musar in divrei Torah, hoping that if a person's listening carefully enough, not simply to enjoy it as like an intellectual exercise, but to actually be able to listen carefully, to be, like you said, yata aznai, to turn yourself, to really listen, to be makshiv, then it's musar. It's not just something that you learn, oh, this is an interesting, like construct the Rebbe is building. No, the whole thing is musar. I'm supposed to find myself in the teaching and to see the madrigas that the Rebbe is describing, and then to measure myself. So where am I in relation to that madriga? How can I approach that madriga? How can I feel the healthy shame of knowing that the higher part of me wants to reach great madrigas, but instead, how do I spend my time, right? Instead, what am I occupied with? The Rebbe says, my Torah ki kula musar haskell. It is all musar gadol v'noyer ma'od. It's chasidus, right? And it's full of encouragement and sweet words and incredible, mind-blowing Torah revelations, but it's really all musar. Al kain, therefore, tzarech li za'er lekayim ashes harti eschem. That's why Rabbi Nachman continued and he said, I want you to do what I encouraged you. Lasis min Torah tefillah. Something we learned about in the past, to turn the Torah that I'm revealing and to turn it into prayer. It's one thing to learn something out of a sefer, but then when you can take that and turn it into a tefillah, to say, Hashem, I want to be mekayim what's written here. Hashem, help me to go ahead and to, not just to learn these words, but to embody them. Then the Torah comes alive, and it leaves the realm of the intellect and it enters the realm of our authenticity, of our vulnerability. It enters the place where we're really growing, right? And not just finding like another escape, even if it's a holy escape, into words of Torah. It's more than that. I want to grow. I want these words of Torah to meet me where I am, and to hold my hand, and to elevate me, and to help me rise, and to help me progress, and to proceed. And the way to do that is to take Torah, which is academic, and to bring it into tefillah, which is ezu avodah shebalev havi omer zu tefillah. Of course, tefillah relates to the heart, and tefillah is how we're able to open our heart to the words of Torah that we are learning. So once we mention the Berditchover Rav, now we move to the next teaching, Sichos Haran Kuf Tzadi Zayin 196, and it's a similar teaching. Not a similar teaching, it's a teaching on the same topic about Rebbe Levi Yitzchak being nifter from the world. Shenifter Amar, Rabbi Nachman said, Afilu ish pashut mechuyev lahargesh hachisaron. Even the simplest person who didn't learn Rebbe Levi Yitzchak's teachings, didn't know any of the stories about him, didn't have any connection with him, everyone has to feel we're missing something. The world is not the same. We just had on Purim, right, was the yahrzeit, I think the 5th yahrzeit, if I'm not mistaken, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzaddik hakodesh Levracha, right? Who in Klal Yisrael, even if you never learned his writings, even if you never went to get a bracha from him, let's say, even if you never answered a halachic shaila or anything, who in Klal Yisrael didn't feel a chisaron? It's sort of like a sad commentary, but it's just the reality on where we are today, that we're sort of hard-pressed to find another tzaddik like that. He might have been like the last of the Mohicans, you know. It's hard to think of another tzaddik that had that. When that tzaddik leaves the world, all of Klal Yisrael, Hasidim, Litvaks, you know, the Yakis, the Sfardim, everybody would feel a lack. You know, Rav Chaim was a Klal Yisrael gadol. He was mamish a Klal Yisrael gadol. There were others like him. Rav Eliashiv was a Klal Yisrael gadol. You know, Rav Steinman. You know, and there were great tzaddikim that were for everyone. Everyone has to feel a chisaron. So Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was certainly of that nature. Someone who mamish saw the sweetness and the holiness of every yid. It didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter where you came from. It didn't matter what language you spoke or what color your skin was. Or Rebbe Levi Yitzchak mamish saw the essence. So Rabbi Nachman said, how could it be that a person is not going to feel the loss? The world is darkened. We're missing Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. Everybody's going to feel that something's missing. Different people will experience this different ways. Some people will feel a little bit sad. Somebody else will find that today some business deal failed, and that comes because the world is darkened. Someone's going to feel in his physical health, he feels tension in the body or some kind of ailment. Every person's going to feel the chisaron differently, but a chisaron, every person must feel. We've lost something. And Rabbi Nachman went along to say every person's going to feel it in a different way. But everyone felt that the light of the world had been extinguished. Someone with open eyes, someone who understands what a tzaddik is, who roya mamish, he could see that a light had been extinguished from the world and a darkness had set in. And that's going to manifest in everyone's life in a slightly different way. And of course, Al Pi Pnimius, each of us have a tzaddik inside of us. Each one of us has a Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, right, inside of us. We all have that aspect of the pe'er, of the tefillin, that aspect that sees our goodness, that aspect that is full of splendor and glory, and is in constant dialogue with Hashem, is never being mesiach das from our tefillin, in all aspects. Every one of us has a Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. When that Rebbe Levi Yitzchak at some point along the journey gets covered over, in a certain sense dies, right, is nistalek, the symptoms of that are going to show up differently in every person's life. Some people will experience it emotionally, some people experience it physically, some people experience it in parnasa. Every person, just like he's saying here with regard to the Rav Levi Yitzchak HaKlali, it's true for the Rav Levi Yitzchak HaPrati. Every person is going to feel that in a different way. To recognize what we lose when we lose this inner Rav Levi Yitzchak, when we lose touch with the part of us that sees our goodness, that sees our sweetness, that can embrace all of our deepest yearnings and strivings and desperation to get close to Hashem and to heal and to be better today than we were yesterday. Losing that is going to have terrible, terrible consequences. Anybody with open eyes can see that losing that is a flame that gets extinguished. We have to bring that back. It should be tchias hamesim within ourselves to find that point, to find that and to identify with that, and not to allow the other voices to drag us down, but on the contrary, to address those other voices rooted in this higher perspective, in this perspective of Rav Levi Yitzchak, in this perspective of the tefillin, of the crown, of the higher part that recognizes our preciousness. So says Reb Nachman continues, we find in the Gemara that when tzaddikim died, many different things happened. There were fires, many different things. Like the Gemara in Moed Katan tells us, it lists a whole bunch of tzaddikim that were nifter, and it lists all these different strange things. Pillars started to fall apart. Shafu Marzave Dama, the rivers of Tzipayre turned into blood. All different things happened. And it is true, Rabbi Nachman said, that even in our place, there's going to be things that change in the world as a result of the tzaddik that left the world. This that they say that they saw a pillar of fire at the Levaya of Rav Levi Yitzchak, says Rabbi Nachman, who apparently wasn't there, Berditchov was very far away, right? Even today, it's a 3-hour travel by car, right? Pretty much or so from Uman, so it was probably a few days of traveling. So he wasn't able to go to the Levaya, but there was a shmua that afterwards spread that people were saying that they saw a pillar of fire. So says Rabbi Nachman, it's a little bit suspect to me, because although the Gemara describes, the Gemara in Ksubis talks about that by great tzaddikim there's a pillar of fire, he says in our generation we're not so ra'oi, we're not so fitting to be able to see a thing like that. But with regard to the greatness of the tzaddik of Levi Yitzchak who left the world, certainly he would have merited for his neshama to be leaving the world in a pillar of fire, and for that to be apparent at his levaya. Ki nistalek roish kazeh. Because with Rebbe Levi Yitzchak's passing, there was a roish that was nistalek, a leader of the people, roish be'emes befrat roish Yisrael, a real leader. Because to be a leader means to be able to see the goodness in everybody. That's what a leader is. Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was able to lead because he saw our goodness. He was empowering. The part of us that's going to be able to lead is the part of us that sees our goodness. Any other part, it might have a lot to say, but it cannot lead. The only part of us that can lead is the part that never takes an eye off of our inherent splendor, the part that's praising us, the part that sees all of our beauty and everything that we've been through, and the part that really sees the truth. The truth is love. The truth is that the essence we're pure and holy and beloved. That part of us is a roish. So when Rebbe Levi Yitzchak left the world, roish be'emes, befrat roish Yisrael, we lost that part of us. Klal Yisrael lost the one who, more than anybody else, was able to see their goodness, their sweetness. Says Rabbi Nachman, "Ka'afilu keshemeis roish v'sar shalumas ha'olam nasim gamkin shunim b'shamayim b'nei kechabim." Even when a great leader of the nations of the world leaves the world, there are differences, changes in the stars, different physical energies as a result of such a powerful soul leaving the world and the impact that makes. Certainly, the nation that themselves is a nation of leaders for the whole world, a kingdom of priests, a mamlechas kehanim, all the more so that it would make sense that the Rosh of Klal Yisrael, a leader within the nation of leaders, of course that's going to have an impact. And again, if to be a leader is to find the goodness in those that we intend to lead, that's what it means to be a Yid, is to find the goodness in humanity, to believe despite everything else. Yes, to take seriously the fact that there's evil in the world and to be wary of it and to not to underestimate that at all, but not to allow the small pockets of extremism to blind us to the overwhelming goodness fundamentally of every human being. Chaviv Adam Sheniver B'Tselem. If we're going to lead, we have to keep the glasses of the Berditchover Rav, and certainly to look at our fellow brethren through those lenses, but even to see all of humanity, all of nature, and to see goodness. That's the essence of everything. The essence of everything is Hashem, and Hashem is good. Taiva Hashem. Hashem is good. Tamu Ru'u. You just need to taste it a little bit, and then you'll see Ki Taiva Hashem. We carry on to Sichos Haran Kuf Tzadi Ches. Here we're speaking about that same year, Shnas Tuf Kuf Ayin. In the year 1809, the year before, Rabbi Nachman was nistalek, B'chayrif in the winter, Acher Chanukah. After Chanukah came and went, Be'eshabasi mi Berditchov, Reb Nosson came back to Uman after a trip to Berditchov. Amar li sheyesh le ma'aseh l'saper. Rabbi Nachman told Reb Nosson, I have a story to tell. Va'amar, and about this story, he said, Shahamaisa zoy sheroitze l'saper. This story that he wants to tell, it's a strange thing. I'm just reading and translating the words. I don't know what this means. But he says, Lo sipro isa ki im pam echad. This story was only told one previous time, Lifnei Bayis Rishon, before the first Beis HaMikdash was built. V'gam hanaviyim lo yadu asayid shala. Even the prophets, even the Nevi'im didn't understand its meaning. Ki im hanavi shesipra isa umi shesipra isa lefanav. The only people who understood it was the Navi that said it, and the person to whom that Navi said it. That's the implication perhaps here, is that Rabbi Nachman himself is a Gilgal of that Navi, and Reb Nosson, the one to whom Rabbi Nachman wanted to share this story, is a Gilgal of the one who understood it then. But he said, V'hu chidush gadol, it's an absolute novelty. V'agam shekvar sipur sakanal, even though it has already been told once in the world, afal pikinu chidush gamer, it is absolutely unique. Hu davar chadash legamri, it's a totally new thing. Because from that point in history until this point in history, it has unfolded what has unfolded, right? So much has happened. When it was told first, before the first Beis HaMikdash, it was told in the way that was fitting to tell it then. Now we need to tell this story differently. And says Rav Nosson, very tragically, sadly, and we did not merit to hear this story. Says Rabbi Nachman, again referring to that story, through the story, by way of the story, I'm able to understand our inyan. I'm able to understand everything that Hashem is causing to unfold in our lives. First, Rabbi Nachman said, it was strange to me. Why is it going to happen this way? That Klal Yisrael is so downtrodden, and that we have no prominence in the world, and that we're not able to do what we're supposed to do. But Rabbi Nachman said, Al pi ha'maisa hanal, through the parable, through the story that was told prior to the construction of the first Beis HaMikdash, Shuv eina kasha liklal, that issue is resolved by way of this story. He was about to tell the story. Something else happened, he got distracted, and we were not privileged to hear the story. But close to this time, Rabbi Nachman told his famous, wondrous, remarkable story of the master of prayer that is printed, that's printed in the sefer Sipurim Maisias, the collection of Rabbi Nachman's wondrous stories. And he told us, don't make the mistake, this is not that story, this is a different story. Then the Rebbe said the story that he wanted to tell, which is like an oddity, because why didn't he just tell it? Like he's spending time talking about a story that he wanted to talk about, so talk about it, But again, everything has its mystery with Rabbi Nachman. It had to be the right time, and it's all mysteries, all mysteries by Rabbi Nachman. Everything is mysteries, but certainly with regard to this tzaddik. So he said to them that the story that he just referred to, Sharatza L'Saper, that he wanted to tell them, who Yafe Oidi Yaiser Me'amayis Zois, was even more beautiful than the story Shalabal Tefillah Haneflav Haneira Ma'oid, which is extraordinarily gorgeous and wondrous and awesome. Ashrei Mishi Yizka L'Shama La'asid. Fortunate will be the person who has the privilege of hearing this story La'asid Lavi when Mashiach comes. Okay, so kedai, if a person can, to read the stories of Sipurei Maasiyos. You can find them online. They're free. It's really, today, everything is accessible. Today, the struggle is time, finding the time and the presence of mind. We're bombarded with so much information. We have access to so much precious information, but we're bombarded. And so we can't find the time. Really, kedai. It's online. It's free. To carve out the time to make a seder in just reading Sipurei Maasiyos. If you want to get commentaries on it, there's one decent, okay commentary on the story of the Lost Princess. It's called The Story of Our Lives, but there are many, many other commentaries in English, in Lashon hakodesh. That's great. But just to read the stories. I don't think people are spending enough time reading the stories. A lot of people are learning Rabbi Nachman, but the stories. Can't encourage the Chevra highly enough to make use of that incredible world. Mamish, a world of feeling, and it's a different kind of teaching. It just goes straight into the heart. Really, kedai, ma'od, to take the time to learn the stories. Okay, here we go through a few very short sichas, extremely short, the next three, just one line each, and they relate to the Torahs that Rabbi Nachman revealed in the sefer hakodesh Likutei Moharan, which I've had the privilege now of teaching every morning, almost every morning for over a year now. Baruch Hashem, we're about a third of the way through the sefer in that series. For those who have been following, we just finished today Torah Mem Tes, and we have given now over 200 shiurim in that series. So the Rebbe says over here, Likutei Moharan is it's a different level. Amar, he said, Ein mishiyuchal lahavin b'hasefer, hainu b'sefer Likutei Moharan. Nobody is able to really understand the sefer. Ki mi sheyachal leimar kol Torah v'Torah panav v'achar. In order to really understand it, you have to be fluent in all the Torahs backwards and forwards. The connotation of this being, and that's very much the mahalach that I've chosen to take, b'siyata d'shmaya, in the shiurim that I'm giving on the sefer, is that it's all one unit. It's not separate teachings that just so happen to be next to each other. All of the teachings are connected, interwoven to all of the other. We call it like an algorithm. Each teaching is a separate data point. It's a whole world on its own. But taken as a whole, it's a data point that contributes to a larger narrative. It's one long story. Like Rabbi Yaakov Meir Shechter said, Likutei Moharan hu sipur echad aroch. It's one long unfolding revelation. And that's what's implied over here. But the Rebbe is saying, you can't understand Torah Aleph if you don't know Torah Mem Zayin. You can't understand Torah Nun unless you know Torah Kuf Tes Vav. It's all one thing. Okay, that's Sichos Haran Kuf Tzadi Tes. And here, Chazei Hashem, we have now learned we've arrived at 200 sichas. There are 308 in the sefer, so we're getting there. Says the Rebbe Amar, the tzaddik said, Kol ha-Torah shali. Anybody who understands and has a little bit of experience with Likutei Moharan knows that Rabbi Nachman's Torah hi kulai hakdamas. They are only hakdamas. You do not finish learning Torah Mem Tes when you get to the end of Torah Mem Tes. Now you have a new hakdama. You've now been gifted with a new set of introductions that you can then use to be able to understand so many areas of Torah, so many areas of human psychology, of what it means to be a Jew, seen through the prism of the Torah that Rabbi Nachman revealed. But the Torahs it's not what he says. The Torah is just a hakdama. Now you take that Torah and you can use it to understand everything else, like Rabbi Nachman says in Sichos Haran Kuf, Reish Aleph, Amar, the tzaddik said, Kol Torah u'maimer sha'omer, every Torah that Rabbi Nachman revealed, Yechoylin leilech v'lavar boy, Kol Torah neviim uksuvim v'Torah shebal peh. Now you can take that one singular Torah, and you can, anchoring yourself in that world, learn all of Torah Shabbat, all of Torah Sheba'al Peh through the prism of that Torah, through the lens of the hakdamas that were revealed, and that's true about every single teaching. This has been demonstrated. There's a sefer that was written, I want to say by the Likutei Rav, I think, that's called Nachas HaShulchan, where he takes Torah Aleph and he goes through the whole Shulchan Aruch, showing how the ideas in Torah Aleph, that's the first page of Likutei Moharan, can illuminate every single area of halacha. That's one Torah. There was somebody closer in our generation, I think his name was Rabbi Yitzchak Rosenman, if I'm not mistaken, I think, who wrote a sefer called Tam Pesach and a sefer called Tam Purim. Again, if I'm not mistaken, I think those are the names of the Sfarim, where he takes every Torah in Likutei Moharan and he shows how it's connected to Pesach. Every Torah in Likutei Moharan, it shows how it's connected to Purim. Right? Every Torah is just a hakdama. Through that hakdama, you can understand Pesach in a brand new way. Right? You move to the next Torah. It's a new lens into Pesach, and Pesach is just one yantiv. It's a lens into all of the Yamim Tovim. It's a lens into everything. And who greater, who demonstrated this more clearly than Rav Nosson in his 8-volume mega massive masterpiece, which is called Likutei Halachos, where he literally goes through the whole Shulchan Aruch, using various teachings of Rabbi Nachman to illuminate this whole dynamic of this particular world of halacha. There's nothing like it. There's no sefer like it in the world, like Likutei Halachos. Nobody takes a teaching from another sefer and then shows how all of the dynamics related to a apparently totally disconnected, random area of halacha, and demonstrates, no, if you take this Torah from Likutei Moharan and you apply it to that teaching and use it as a hakdama, use it as a lens, you can understand the greatest wonders from within that area of halacha. And that's what Likutei Halachos is. Again, what treasures, endless treasures we were gifted, and we have a responsibility not just to learn for ourselves, but to be able to share with others as well. Finally, we take a look at Torah at Sichos Haran 202. Reish Beis says the Heilige Tzaddik Shamati B'Shmoi Zal Sha'amar. Rabbi Nachman said, I want to tell you, and again, this wasn't boasting, he just wanted to tell the truth. He wanted to let us know what we had access to. He said, Sheyesh chiluk ben hakodesh Torah shemegalan tzaddikim. There are different kinds of Torah that tzaddikim reveal. It's all beautiful, all Torah, all true, but there's a difference. Ke'ein Shamar Abeseinu Zal, something similar to what the Gemara famously tells us in Meseches Yevamis of Memtes Amid Beis. Sheyesh chiluk bein navi ba'asbaklaria she'ena me'ira. There's a difference between a prophecy that is compared to looking through an unclear glass called an asbaklaria she'ena me'ira, a glass that isn't lucid and shining, to the prophecy l'nevuas Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom, to the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu shaya b'asbaklaria ha'me'ira, which we know Moshe Rabbeinu saw through a clear looking glass, right? Everything was crystal clear. That's why by the Nevi'im you have to really work to interpret. It's very vague, it's very obscure, it's very mysterious. And by Moshe Rabbeinu it's just super clear, right? It's just Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemar. You don't need to interpret. It's absolutely clear. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. Valkain, therefore, Rabbi Nachman says, and he says the same thing in Likutei Moharan, Shar Hanavim Nisna B'Koy Amar Hashem. We find another Ma'am Chazal that says that the other prophets prophesied with the words Koy Amar Hashem. God said, you could say something like this. Koy means something like this, which means it's a lack of clarity. Shubas Baklari She'ena Me'ira. That's reflective of this other teaching that says that they saw through a lens that wasn't clear. Aval Moshe Amar, but Moshe Rabbeinu says Zeh hadavar. Zeh means to point with your finger. It means this is what hakodesh Baruch Hu said, not something foggy, vaguely like. No, Zeh. Shu davar barur b'chinas asbaklaria hame'ira, which is something clear, the aspect of the clear lens. Kamuva b'perish Rashi, like Rashi tells us Parshas Matos. Va'amar Huzal, and Rabbi Nachman said, Shekumai Kain, in the same way, Ish b'chinas chiluk hazeh bin hachidush Torah shalat tzaddikim. It's not prophecy, but there is this same aspect of distinction between the chidush Torah that are revealed by different tzaddikim. Ki yesh tzaddikim sha'omrim chidush Torah amitim, There are some tzaddikim that teach true Torah. And then they find it, but sometimes like they fetch it, they find it hinted to in a Rosh Tevis, or they have some remez and a pasuk, which is beautiful and true. It doesn't mamish read in to the pasuk and the context of the pasuk and the different mefarshim and ring true on the level of pshat remez drush inside. Is a remez a smichas ba'alma. It could have been that pasuk, it could have been a different pasuk. He just found the pasuk to sort of use as a to find a hint there. This is the aspect of the prophet that sees, but it's through a foggy and dirtied lens. And there are many sefarim like this. Again, the Torah is true. Kulam ahuvim, kulam burim. It's useful, it's deep, and it's wonderful. Aval, says the Rebbe, but there's a difference. Because yesh tzaddikim ne'ra'im, there are awesome tzaddikim, different level tzaddik, she'im bebechinas Moshe. Their Torah is on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Shechidushe Torasam heim berurim v'zakim kashemesh. Their Torah is clear and refined like the sunshine. And literally, it's explicit. You can't understand how you learned that Gemara before you see it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's mamish emes. And it reflects not only in that particular Mamar Chazal, but it reflects maybe even in Perish Rashi, in a remez, that you can find the same idea. It expands, it extends. It rings true on multiple levels. You step back and you say, wow, this is emes. This is not just a remez. This is mamish what Chazal meant. They couldn't have meant something else. This is it. It's literally, it's mivur, it's there. It's like your eyes open and you see it. This pasuk or this Maimar Chazal that the tzaddik is using, this is called aspaklaria me'ira. This is called a clear looking glass. This is an aspect of this pointing with your finger. This is the thing. This is Torah's emes, Torah min hashamayim. This is ruach hakodesh. You can literally see it's so obvious, it's so clear. This was the emes all along. And without these hakdamas, I never would have known this. I could have never looked at this Maimar Chazal, at this network of different psukim. It rings true on so many different levels. I would never have seen it without the brand new chidushim that the tzaddik is revealing. That the tzaddikim are revealing a Torah where literally you can point your finger at it and say, this is a revelation of the divine. And humbly, I say this honestly, if I believed something else, I'd say something else. I've learned, Baruch Hashem, a number of the Sfarim HaKadoshim and got to see a lot. I'm very interested in Sfarim and I poke around a lot. I have never, ever seen anything similar to the way that Rabbi Nachman is able to take Mamar Chazal and Psukim and to do with them what he describes over here, to bring them together in such a way with a novel idea that no tzaddik ever spoke about, and to enable us to take a look back at these same Mamar Chazal and Psukim that we're so familiar with, and to say, oh my goodness, like this is the emes. I can't describe it unless you experience it yourself, which I bless all of us with. Everybody who's hearing this shiur and all the people who are not hearing this shiur yet, everybody should mamish have their own experience of this, because then you'll know. It's very hard to put words to. It's an experience. You can't name the taste of a strawberry. You have to eat the strawberry. When you do it and you sit and you learn, I'm thinking particularly just right in the beginning, Tar Gimel, the Indian over there where he speaks about Talmuda ka'amar, Rabba ka'amar le. He learns the pirush of the Rashbam into the revelation that he's revealing that he's already used to illuminate 10 psukim and 5 Mamar Chazal with a brand new dynamic. Go back to Torah Aleph, you speak about Divrei Chachamim ben Nachas Nishma'im. Now that he's revealed the aspect of the Nun and the Ches, now that it creates a Taf, that's the word Nachas, and it fits perfectly because the whole The whole thing of the nun and the ches was that our tefillah should be niskabel, and here it is in a pasuk that again you never would have gotten there unless you have all these different elements. Torah vav, I mean you can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Torah tes, which is connected to Torah kufyud aleph, like it's endless. Ein davar kazeh ba'olam, and not because we're Breslev and so we have to say that our tzaddik is the greatest tzaddik. Pok chazi v'tishkach. Every person should try it for themselves. Like it's not something we need to like convince you. Sit down and learn it, and then you tell me honestly whether you've ever learned Torah like this in your life. In your life, money back guarantee. You know, you don't like it. We're not. What is it like? Green eggs and kosher meat, right? Like we're not going to shove it down your throat. Taste it. Tamu u'ru'u, and then I believe shalem that. Call me anybody who has a functioning brain, anybody who has a heart that's humble, teachable, open, not trying to fight, open, will be able to see. There are certain Torahs that you can see it more clearly than others, but kemat every single Torah, the breathtaking revelation of Aspaklaria Ha'me'ira, of this Moshe Rabbeinu level tzaddik that we have a privilege of learning his teachings together every week. Some of us have the privilege of learning the teachings every day, but that all of us have a privilege of being connected with. Ein davar kazeh ba'olam. And we just daven that this light will spread and that the tikkunim that the Rebbe is doing in the world continue for all of us befrat, for all of Am Yisrael bechlal, to bring us closer and closer to the ultimate day where the ultimate revelation will be revealed by Yom Hahu, Yashem Echad U'Shmai Echad. It should be soon, B'Nisan Asidin Li'Yigoel. We're coming to the month of Geula, and we're so desperate, we're so ready, mamish, like, you know, we've come to this point of we're so desperate for an objective Giloi. Let it come to the end. We're mamish ready and prepared for it. We should greet Mashiach together with great joy and great gratitude and great openness. B'bias koel tzedek b'meher b'yameinu. Amen va'amen. Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. Okay, phenomenal. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. And Be'ezras Hashem, we should only hear good news. B'suras tovas for all of Am Yisrael. B'siyata d'shmaya. Okay, have an amazing, amazing week. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for listening. We should only hear good news. B'siyata d'shmaya. Yeshakayach. Thank you.
Recordings.
אני הבן ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני